Miami. Or as I like to call it, Shangri-La. Where old people come to retire, and young people come to stay young. It's one of America's most vital cities. I've always wondered what it would be like to get a place down here. Maybe a swanky pad like this one. It's got all the amenities. Custom gourmet kitchen, the soaking tub, and of course, unobstructed views of the water. And this is the guy who would sell it to me.
So, gorgeous property.
Very nice home.
This is it. This is the life.
Yeah, we're on the Venetian Islands right now. Basically, it separates Miami Beach from downtown Miami.
Unbelievable. And this is like the most desired neighborhood-ish, right?
Exactly.
And in fact, are property values going up?
Values are going up like crazy. I mean, it's amazing what you see 5 years ago today. The increases in prices are incredible.
Yeah.
Miami is beautiful. You have the weather. It's really like the place to be.
Do people ever talk about climate change and the rising sea levels? Is that a concern of any of your clients?
For my clients and other friends in the industry, it's not really a concern.
Because it's paradise, it's tropical, it's gorgeous, and yet it is, according to the scientists, one of the most vulnerable to climate change. Sea rises a couple feet, this whole thing gets, but no one, it's just like, yeah, nah, whatevs.
When I was a kid, sea level rise wasn't even a thing. Back then, oceans were scary because of pirates, sharks, and violent storms.
I was on the phone with my father during Hurricane Katrina, when the line went dead. I was amazed I ever saw him again.
He said my brother is standing on his house. Everything he ever had was gone.
That's crazy.
We used to kick the soccer ball right here.
This is my family's neighborhood. The neighborhood I loved.
Everyone who stayed went into their attics, but the problem is the water kept going, and there was no way for them to ever get out. There were body bags all along the road.
Ever since Katrina, it seems to me that storms are coming faster and more furiously. To find out whether this is all just in my head, I'm here in the Bahamas with my wife, Nikki, about to rendezvous with the team of top scientists on that boat down there. Their mission? To understand what effect human-caused climate change will have on the storms of the future.
Wouldn't want to live here in Miami. It's beautiful. But is sea level rise something people here actually have to worry about? To find out, I've arranged to meet with a scientist named Karen Bolter. She lives in South Florida and says she'll give me the lowdown. Today, she's introducing me to two of the top climate scientists in Florida, Ben Kurtman and Harold Wanless.
So what are we looking at here?
So here we go. This is what it looks like in 2030. Everything in red is going to be underwater. In 15 years, during the extreme tide in October, every high tide is going to be this high. That's just 15 years from now. Now let's look at 2060. High tide in October, areas that will be below sea level. It's uninhabitable.
I can't believe what I'm looking at. Whole parts of Miami gone? I had no idea it could be this bad, and so soon.
And, you know, a hurricane in October is absolutely not unheard of. That happens here. So now you have sea level rise and storm surge. Think about how much flooding they're going to suffer during a major event.
If a storm surge hit in 2060, this is what's vulnerable once the sea level is that high.
And you're looking at less than 50 years in the future.
I was in a movie called Waterworld, and it got really bad reviews. But now we can see that we were right. Can you show me on the map what the worst case scenario is for, say, 2100?
The high projections for 2100 are 6.6 feet. When the tide is highest, everything in red will be underwater.
Whoa.
Yeah, the entire county.
There's no safe place.
There's no more Miami.
The port facility's compromised, the airport's compromised, no fresh water resources.
Also, you know, just because there's places that are above water, if there's no roads going to the place, it's essentially cut off from civilization.
That's what we're telling communities to plan for. We're not just looking at South Florida. This is a proxy for all the coastal areas of the world, the Mumbais, the Shanghais, the Atlantic cities.
There's going to be like massive migrations of humanity moving to different parts of the world just to survive, right? I mean, we're talking about...
It's going to happen in the coming centuries because all of this carbon that we put into the atmosphere, it hasn't even started to make its impact, but there's such a time lag.
The big urgency is that every year we don't do anything, we're warming the ocean more, and it's that heat that's accelerating melting of ice. And that's the scary part.
We need to start thinking about how we build and plan, not for the next 5 years, but for the next 100 years.
I really had no idea that all the carbon dioxide we've emitted will continue to do damage for decades, raising the seas all around the world. What are the millions of people who live on the coast supposed to do?
Just 40 miles from Miami, Nikki and I are about to embark on a week-long science expedition.
Hi!
As scary as hurricanes are to me, I've got to admit, I'm excited to be on this ship, the Aleutian, a state-of-the-art research vessel.
Jeff, nice to meet you. Such a pleasure, man. Truly. You guys like to see the ship?
Our host for the voyage is Jeff Donnelly. He's a top geologist with the famed Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Massachusetts.
The submarines. We're going to be going down on these in a couple of days. There's Al in there.
Yeah, this is Nikki.
Hi, guys.
We're going down in a submarine? Okay. I'm dying to know more about this mission and to see if there really is a connection between a warming planet and more violent storms.
There's the bridge. Okay. There's Captain Frank over there.
Hi, Frank.
Thanks for driving us.
Many of the hurricanes that are impacting the United States are actually sort of tracking here through the Bahamas and past Cuba. This is Quesal Bank right here. This is where we're headed.
And we're in this area specifically because...
It's a submerged bank off the Florida coast. It has some really deep holes in it called blue holes. Well, these blue holes, they accumulate sediment through time that actually provides a record of past hurricanes. All this marine sediment's getting washed in and day out and just accumulating this in this beautiful pile.
That's just perfectly collecting sediment over time.
Right, and so it's really well positioned to be sort of our weather station, monitoring the hurricanes that have impacted North America, going back hundreds and hundreds of years and even millennia.
It's fascinating to learn that these underwater caves, called blue holes, actually contain the history of hurricanes. To reveal that history, Jeff explains that he drills long tubes into the sea floor,
Lift it up and you're gonna put a cap on it, fast as you can.
pulling up layers of mud,
Let's get it up on the deck.
revealing the core sample inside. It's those strata that hold ancient clues about our future.
Hurricanes are often related to sea surface temperatures. And so one of the concerns is that with the planet warming so much, we might see hurricanes getting much more intense.
in increase in frequency or in intensity, or both.
We're sort of wrestling with that. It's those, Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricanes that our computer models suggest will actually increase with global warming.
So the data that you could be collecting here could tell us that we are heading into a new age of superstorms, basically?
We can basically have a climate experiment that's run over millennium, telling us when you get warm sea surface temperatures, you should get many more very intense hurricanes.
I like that, nature's climate experiment.
That's right.
So the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's Cuba.
The blue hole we're going to look at is right there.
Has anyone ever done this work before?
No, I mean, this is really hard to do. We're out in the middle of the ocean going into an area that's quite shallow, so you can't get a really large oceanographic ship in here. But yet when you get there, you have to core down 300 feet, so you need some significant pieces of equipment to do that. It's a really challenging place to work. If the weather doesn't cooperate, if a piece of equipment breaks, somebody gets hurt, it's possible that we could walk away with nothing.
I can't believe I'm on this groundbreaking mission to explore a blue hole. We're going to look into the past to discover the future of hurricanes that could someday make landfall.
As I ponder Miami's future, I can't help but notice how normal everyone's acting. Don't these people realize the city's on the verge of a major crisis? Already streets are flooding during some high tides. Salt water bubbling up from drains and making things miserable. But it seems that sea level rise isn't a priority for some of Florida's top politicians, like second-term Governor Rick Scott.
Officials in Florida's Department of Environmental Protection were banned from using the words climate change in official reports and communications.
Scott's office denied there was a policy, but state workers seem to be dancing around the terms at a hearing.
Future versions of our mitigation plan will be required to have language discussing that issue.
What issue is that?
The issue that you mentioned earlier regarding...
So, are there any politicians here who are taking things seriously? Turns out there's one right here, in Miami Beach, Mayor Philip Levine.
We're all fighting against sea level rise. We believe that if we organize together, hopefully our voice will be that much louder.
If there's a politician who can help save Miami, I gotta meet him.
Mayor Levine, good to meet you.
Welcome to Miami Beach.
So, Mayor, what kind of things are you doing to prepare for what's coming and what's happening?
Basically the sea level goes up, the bay goes up, and the water comes out of our drains onto our streets. So what we did right away is we immediately started putting in massive pumps under the ground to push the water back out to where it came. And we also began raising the roads. So for example, the area you're in right now, you see how low we are. We've actually raised the street higher. 2 years ago.
That's what this is.
Exactly.
But what about down here? What about this? When it floods, this is not higher.
There are drains around us where the water will go into. So we're lower, there's drains here, that's a higher street. This will not flood. We believe it's a good 40, 50-year solution. We're not raising them for today. This is for 50 years.
This is a 50-year solution.
Absolutely.
But the forecast for Miami seemed to be pretty grim. I mean, they're talking about, the end of the century, most of Miami being underwater.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with those forecasts. I believe in climate change, and I believe it's human-made, and I believe that the seas are rising.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I believe in the very aggressive forecast put out there.
Okay, but at this current pace of sea level rise, Miami will be submerged unless something drastic is done?
I'm optimistic. I believe we can get it done. One of our biggest obstacles, Jack, is that we have a state with a governor and a cabinet that doesn't believe in sea level rise. And they've turned a blind eye.
Right.
And they just say, you know what, we don't believe it, we don't think so, we don't see a sense of urgency. And we're trying to convince the governor, forget about politics and just understand that your streets are flooding, that you have coastal cities that need help.
Mayor Levine may only be planning a few decades out, but at least he's trying. What about that governor, Rick Scott?
Hi, this is Jack Black calling for Governor Scott.
My Hollywood cred doesn't get me through.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
The best I can do is leave my number.
Okay, mission not accomplished.
As we make our way toward the mysterious blue hole off the coast of Cuba, I learned there really is reason to fear more storms like Katrina. Baby, listen to this. In a 2012 study, a major finding was that Katrina-sized surges have been twice as frequent in warm years compared with cold years. That's crazy. That's what these guys are talking about. In a 2013 paper, Grinstead and his colleagues estimate, the doubling of Katrina magnitude events associated with the warming over the 20th century.
Just the 20th century.
Just the 20th century.
That's crazy.
The study concludes we have probably crossed the threshold where Katrina magnitude hurricane surges are more likely caused by global warming than not. In the early daylight hour of the next morning, Day 3 on the magnificent ship Aleutiia, we're approaching our destination, the Blue Hole. I'm dying to see this underwater cave Jeff and his team have been talking so much about.
Let's do this.
It's actually a shallow water alarm, sort of telling us that it's too shallow. 6 under the keel.
6 meters underneath the keel. I think we're okay.
For the moment. Yeah, okay. I might come hard left and receive and run across it.
Roger.
Sorry, this is the wall right here. So you can see the blue hole coming in there now. Okay.
Dr. Donnelly, there's your blue hole, man.
Would it really be possible to raise up the entire city of Miami to save it from big storms and sea level rise, the way Mayor Levine wants to on Miami Beach? I decided to talk to another mayor, Phil Stoddard of South Miami, to get his take.
Mr. Mayor, I just came from a lunch with Mayor Levine, and his solution seems to be, we'll just lift the city up. We're going to lift up the streets.
His plan will work for a while. And it'll work on Miami Beach, because Miami Beach has a very high income level per square mile. If you go out to West Miami-Dade County, the land does not generate enough income to do the kinds of projects that Levine is talking about in Miami Beach. There's just not enough money there.
But is it even a realistic goal to say, let's lift the whole city up 3 feet? It seems insane to me.
We don't have that much rock.
Right.
So if you elevate the roads, then your driveway is sort of going whoop like this, so you got to elevate your driveways, then you got to elevate your sidewalks, then you might want to put some dirt in between them so people don't fall off. And then there's the fact that your house is down in a hole, so you got to start elevating the houses and the schools.
$2 trillion later.
And the hospitals and everything. I don't think we can afford it.
What about further projections? What do you see Miami looking like in 100 years?
Waterworld.
Waterworld?
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that. I actually had a small role. You wouldn't have recognized me. I was covered in grease, but I still think we were on to something there.
Yeah, well, I love that great sailboat he had.
Sorry to get off topic. What about seawalls? The solution of seawalls, is that a...
Problem for Miami is that we sit on top of a bed of porous limestone. And you know what's going to kill us? The shrimp. There's these prehistoric shrimp that dug in the sediments and made holes underneath us.
The whole city is built on a foundation of Swiss cheese, basically?
Yeah, a rocky version of Swiss cheese. You want to see a piece of it?
Yeah.
I got some out here in the yard.
Example?
Yeah, I got some of it. So, Jack, this is the reason we can't keep the water out. This is Miami Formation limestone, and the water goes right through it.
So this is the foundation that Miami is built on?
You can build on it, but if you build a wall up on top of that to keep the water out, the water goes right through the holes. Right. Comes from underneath you.
So Mayor Levine says, don't listen to the doomsayers. Miami's here to stay. What do you think?
This place is going to be underwater. We have enough heat in the atmosphere right now, enough heat in the oceans. enough carbon dioxide.
Eventually Miami will be underwater, it's just a matter of when?
You got it. The sea level is going to rise, and Miami won't be here when it rises.
We've arrived at the Blue Hole, just 50 nautical miles off the coast of Cuba. Today, we go down inside it.
Here we go. This is lifting off, and we're off.
Even though Jeff has cored many blue holes before,
Amazing.
he's never been down to the bottom of one because they're too deep to dive. So this will be a first for both of us.
It's a rocky little bastard. Here we go.
So listen, Nadir. Bombs okay, no leaks. SOS on Nadir, venting now, over. Okay, here we go, guys.
Yeah.
I'd say that's perfection.
Ah, I love hearing that that's perfection.
And the wall for the hole is pretty much straight ahead right off of our stern.
They're seeing a bottom at about 75 meters, about 210 feet. So they're basically descending this wall.
We are literally sinking into this giant blue hole.
Nadir, control my depth at 7 meters. Vents are secure.
Coming up on the wall.
Confirm descending to 20 meters on the wall.
What is a blue hole? What is it that we're in right now?
Blue hole is basically a cave that forms in a carbonate platform or limestone. Sea level has risen about 350 feet since the last ice age. It drowns it, so you basically end up with a hole in the ocean floor. And that hole is just collecting sediments all the time. You can see it all around us, sort of falling through the water column.
So that sand covers everything and just blankets it.
It's similar to a tree ring, putting on a new layer every year, so it accumulates in the bottom. What happens when a hurricane strikes, it whips up some really big particles off the bank top and throws that in the hole, and then that's our record of the passage of that particular hurricane. So by taking a sediment core in these blue holes, we can actually do a reconstruction through time of those hurricane events.
This is a perfect time capsule.
That time capsule basically starts when the sea floods this, probably about 8,000 years ago. So we should have about 8,000 years worth of sediment accumulating in the hole. We probably won't be able to collect that much sediment, and we might get a few thousand years.
Roger that. Coming down to the bottom more so we get better visibility and event 270.
Almost. I don't think anyone's ever seen what we're seeing right now.
It's really exciting. I mean, being able to lay eyes on something that no human has ever seen before.
It's amazing.
Control. This is Nadir, off bottom depth, 7.5 meters, ascending over.
Thank you, Captain. Great maneuvering, man.
That was a great scout. Now comes the hard part. Jeff and his team will try to drive these aluminum tubes deep into the ocean floor. The farther they go down, the more data they'll collect, but the more ambitious they are, the more often things can go wrong. The tubes can bend or even break.
Okay, starting the launch now, Cap.
Launch away.
Keep on going with all this stuff. Everybody's happy.
All right, starter up.
Nice and easy.
We're lying on the bottom.
Right, stop it.
I lost her right at the bottom.
Work out those muscles.
Okay, the fiber core has the surface. She's at an angle there at the end, but hopefully by the time she did that, she was already going.
Hi, Steve.
As so often happens, the core is broken.
And then it fell off while we were securing it.
All the team can do is try again.
All right, let's get another one going.
But if anything more goes wrong, a big-time mission like this one could all be for nothing.
I can't stop thinking of all the neighborhoods away from the glamour of Miami Beach, on the mainland, that are going to be impacted by the rising oceans coming up through the porous limestone. Of the nearly 3 million people who live in the Miami area, more than half are lower income or immigrant. What are they going to do? I arrange a meeting with Nicole Hernandez-Hammer, a scientist who left academia to work as a climate activist here.
So great to meet you.
What a gorgeous summer day in the middle of December.
Yeah,
Is
we
this
still get a
natural?
little bit of flooding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's happening here? Is this water?
This is high tide.
This is just high tide.
Yeah, and this
It's
is
not
actually a foot less than last month.
crazy, because I thought that maybe this was like leftover from rain.
No, this is today.
Wow.
And no rain. It's really tough because I think sometimes people see the flooding and they think maybe a water main broke or it's just bad infrastructure. They're not making the connection between the climate change and what's happening here.
Just to be clear, we're pretty far away from the beach right now.
We're on the mainland now.
Miles away from the beach, and yet water comes all the way here through the floor, basically.
Through the limestone, yeah. And it carries with it whatever is sitting on the surface and slightly underground, like septic tanks or auto shops and whatever they've got coming out of their place, and it collects.
It's like biohazard stuff.
Yeah.
It can be toxic.
It's got all sorts of bacteria, and people don't know about it. So they're walking around in the water, their kids are splashing in the water. It's a public health concern.
Damn. And we're talking about people that have lived here their whole lives, and it's probably tough for them to wrap their head around that, right?
I think there's a certain degree of denial.
Yeah.
I think people feel like, you know, the elected officials or state agencies are gonna figure it out. It can't possibly be that Miami's gonna be underwater.
Is the governor hearing your voice? Is there a movement in the?
He heard it, but he's pretending he didn't hear it.
Right.
A group of my colleagues had a meeting with him, and he listened, and then they left, and then that was it. And nothing changed.
Yeah. So, you can see the writing on the wall. What do you tell people in the community?
Essentially, it's telling people that what we have here is going away, and they could lose everything. But I'd like to introduce you to some people that I talked to.
How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? How you
Nice to meet you.
Good.
So Nicole is telling me that sometimes the septic tanks can mix with the groundwater, and it can be like dangerous water. Has that ever been a problem?
We're like 2 blocks down, and it gets really bad. It gets flooded really bad, and it stinks.
I don't know if that's like gases or something.
Right.
And then it just smells really like bad.
Tell the kids, don't go splashing in that water.
No.
Do you guys get worried because like the level of the ocean is just going to keep on rising, and it's only like probably 1 foot away from actually water coming into your house? Are people concerned about Miami and like the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna devalue the home eventually. People are gonna come by and see it, and there's no interest in buying a property like that.
Is this really our future? One where eventually millions of Americans will have to move away from the coast? If that happens, where are they all gonna go? Who's gonna decide where they go? And who is going to pay for it all?
Hello? Hi. Yes, it's Jack Black calling again. Just wanted to talk to Governor Scott.
I decided to call Governor Rick Scott one more time. You know, the one who apparently won't listen to his mayors or his scientists.
It's regarding climate change. Okay, but what if I say I just want to talk about like weather difference. Does that make a difference? Because I know.
Again, I don't get through.
All right. He knows where to find me if he wants to call me. But I'm not going to hold my breath. Thank you.
This is insane to me. Miami's going under, but so many people are acting like nothing's wrong.
I'm in awe at the number of people involved on this mission and the passion that they bring to the task. They seem tireless too.
Go real slow and steady for the last half of it, okay?
Working from morning to night, all in the name of climate science. And even though they've come up empty so far, the team is determined to get enough core samples to make the trip to this blue hole worth the cost.
All right, Chris, up easy.
You happy now?
I will be when we land this.
Okay, so how do we make that happen?
We're just about to. If this lands on deck, we will have just collected the longest core ever collected from a blue hole on Earth.
Well, they're laughing. It must be something good.
Came up by a fingernail.
It's precious. We don't want to lose any. No. All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3.
Jeff will analyze this core back at Woods Hole to see when hurricanes occurred and how powerful they were. He'll also study how warm the sea surface temperature was. That's where Pete Van Hingstum comes in.
What's up, Pete? Mind if I come in?
He's a micropaleontologist and a key part of this team.
Have a look, it's all set up.
Wow. It's like a whole little world in there.
Look at these on the bigger screen. Essentially what you're looking at are millions of tiny shells that are being deposited in these blue holes.
This is from the core drilling that you just did?
Absolutely. These are the microfossils that were at the very bottom of that core.
I'm still not completely understanding the climate connection.
These organisms make their shells out of the mineral calcium carbonate. And when you form those shells, the chemistry of the shell is linked to the temperature of when that animal was living.
How do you check the temperature?
We can measure the ratio of the heavy to light oxygen atoms inside of these shells. And the relationship of that ratio is controlled by the ocean's temperature. We still need to radiocarbon date leaves that are preserved inside the cores to know how old all the different sediment layers are. So
now I'm beginning to see the full picture. By analyzing the fossils as well as the mud they pull up from the sea bottom, these scientists can tell not just when a hurricane occurred, but how warm the water was at that time.
So imagine if going back through time for 1,000 or 2,000 years, every single year we knew how many hurricanes made landfall and what the temperature of the ocean was like. Were there more hurricanes in the past? Was the ocean warmer? We're going to be able to learn so much about climate, how the environment in those holes changed through time. That's just really exciting.
So cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing.
Well, we've got the mud, and we've got the fossils. Now it's just a matter of what Jeff Donnelly is going to find out in his lab back in Massachusetts.
Everywhere I go, I see construction cranes and new buildings going up. With sea levels rising, surely the developers in Miami are aware of the risk. Or are they thinking maybe people can just swim to the kitchen for breakfast?
Hey, Jack.
I ask an architect, Ronaldo Borges, and an insurance expert, Alex Kaplan, to meet.
Insurance mogul?
Something like that.
Architect extraordinaire?
Yes, sir.
Great to meet you. I'm Jack Black, actor supreme. Let's have a seat, please. So currently, how many new buildings are being built in Miami?
Right now we have over 300 permits for significant high-rise, mid-rise construction.
There's no slowing down in sight.
Right now we have over $20 billion of new buildings going up.
Unbelievable.
That none of them really have been thought through in terms of permanent flooding.
So no one seems to be panicked about, hey, Miami's going to be one of the most severely hit places with regard to climate change. No, building increases.
The city builders are sort of saying, okay, we're experiencing construction here that is unprecedented with a lot of cash coming to Miami. Everybody's happy and it's fantastic.
Okay, now I get it. Real estate developers aren't concerned about the future. They're cashing in today while the getting's good.
You know, in Florida alone, you've got $544 billion worth of property that lives within 6 feet of the high tide line. You know, it's right on the front line for sea level rise.
Alex's company, Swiss Re, is an international insurance giant. They insure the insurance companies. Alex understands risk.
Yeah. The problem is, overwhelmingly, people, individuals, corporations, and governments underestimate what they're exposed to. I think the expectation is that, well, the government will come in and solve our problem, so why should I deal with it today? But flood insurance in the U.S. doesn't cover these things. Sea level rise over time, that's on the owner of the building. Nobody else is paying for that.
At what point do you think people go, wait a second, it's not worth it anymore?
These residential buildings get transferred from the developer into an association. If at a certain point the insurance company tells the association, we cannot insure your building because of the risk assessment, suddenly now they have a building that doesn't have insurance. You know, it's really scary to think that South Florida will not be insurable.
So many people own homes. They have 30-year mortgages on them. You know, and thinking about how a lot of these towers are financed, right? It's entirely unsustainable.
I get that no one wants this party to end. But when the insurance companies decide the risk is too high and the banks stop giving mortgages, this whole house of cards is going to collapse, right? I can't help wondering what'll happen to everyone who lives here when all this property isn't worth anything.
It's been a few months since I've seen Jeff Donnelly and his team. I'm a little anxious as I arrive at their lab at Woods Hole here on Cape Cod. I'm wondering, am I about to learn the worst about the future of Atlantic hurricanes?
One of those cores that we took on the cruise, we split it open here for you so we can have a look at it.
Wow.
And so as you sort of march down this core, you're marching back through time. The entire core goes back a little over 1,000 years.
That's incredible.
The base of this section is probably about 500 years ago. Europeans hadn't even settled North America when these sediments were being deposited. So Columbus doesn't arrive until somewhere at the upper end of this section here. If we date a whole series of those, we can actually build a really nice chronology of events.
So question, you have consistency in the core and then you have these inconsistent patterns. These are events, right?
Right, yeah. So these really coarse intervals here are what's being deposited during a hurricane.
That's a hurricane?
That's right.
You go down a number of years and it's pretty quiet. Right. But then all of a sudden you get boom, 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 1, 2, 3 events within, say, 10 years.
That's right.
This is incredible.
So we've got one here at the base of this core. I can show you. This is probably one of the bigger event beds we have in this particular core. So here you got really coarse debris, and there's probably 10 or 15 centimeters of it. Something that large is probably a Category 4 or 5 hurricane.
And this is like a Katrina.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be more intense than Katrina was.
Hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. There was a lot of activity. Why?
Well, it turns out that this particular interval is one in which sea surface temperatures are actually pretty warm along the eastern seaboard of the United States. And those warm sea surface temperatures actually caused much more hurricane activity. What this is showing us is that what the climate models are saying is really right. Hurricanes are really sensitive to sea surface temperature, and when you warm up the sea surface temperature even a little bit, you start getting more intense hurricanes.
Is that where we're headed right now?
Well, that's exactly the worry. There's this natural variability in the oceans and in the climate system that sometimes it was warmer, sometimes it was colder. But what's happening now is we've been warming up the sea surface temperatures with greenhouse gas emissions. The planet should actually be cooling right now, and it isn't. It's warming rapidly. We've shot past the warmest period in basically the last 450 years.
So by virtue of us heating the surface temperatures of the water, we're already warmer than this was when we had this super violent, very, very active storms.
Right.
All right. Then we look more closely at one of these storms of the past to see what could be coming our way.
This 1821 storm we actually know quite a bit about. So you basically have a really fast-moving Category 3 hurricane going right up the eastern seaboard, right over New Jersey and New York City.
That had to have been so destructive.
Those sort of 1821 kind of storms that
we're seeing in the cores. Really big or really intense storms. Sandy, for example, we barely see any deposit. So why was there so much damage from Sandy, even though it was a minimal hurricane when it made landfall? And it turns out, we're the problem. This is basically what the New Jersey shoreline looked like when the 1821 hurricane hit. And you see that we didn't build anything on it. There's a few fishing shacks and that's about it.
Right.
This is that same stretch of shoreline today. We basically built Atlantic City, this urban area, on top of this barrier island.
And then there's all this permanent infrastructure, whether it be hotels,
port facilities,
homes, all of this.
Natural gas terminal.
All that sits vulnerable to these storms.
Imagine you're watching this big Category 4 hurricane spinning off of North Carolina. Literally 8-12 hours you'll have to make some really critical decisions about how to get people out of harm's way across this really heavily populated.
But that's literally an impossibility.
Right.
Katrina, we had days and we still did a horrible job.
Indeed. So that's what's really scary about these storms. We basically put ourselves in harm's way.
In this harm's way. And as these waters get warmer, these storms are only going to become more frequent.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time.
The more I learn about Miami's fate, the less I'm able to wrap my head around it. Are we gonna have to someday rename it the Lost City of Miami? It's only a matter of time before a major storm hits. But it's been a decade and they've been lucky. So maybe that's part of the denial here. It's all making me feel a little crazy.
I'm imagining that if I lived here in Miami, what would I do?
What do you think you'd do?
What we know is coming is sea level rise. 3 feet, 6 feet, 12 feet. What is it that keeps me from really believing or wrapping my head around these facts?
Here's your premise that's wrong. You are thinking that our brains are only rational, and they're not. Our brains are wired in part to deny unpleasant emotions. There is a part of our brain which is highly rational, analyzes data, takes in information, and then there's the emotional part of the brain. And the emotional part of the brain is extremely powerful.
And it feels more comfortable just to shut down the scientific part of my brain and just enjoy the right now, just do nothing.
You are not alone. I have dubbed the condition pre-traumatic stress disorder. I am hearing what the scientists are saying in my mind, playing it like a tape all the time.
I do.
Now, was there a specific incident that heightened this sense of vulnerability and connected it with climate?
I remember my parents fighting when I was a little boy, and I was so scared of their anger towards each other, I ran into a room with my nanny. Okay, that has nothing to do with climate change.
Oh, but...
That's just what came up. I don't know why, but that sense of
try to think.
fear and danger and instability.
Right.
It's just so unfathomable, the idea of change.
So there's the tension. In that space, while you're trying to find a peaceful resolution, you just kind of don't do anything.
Do you think those are coconuts up there?
What do you think they are?
It's really hard for me to live with the fact that more storms like Katrina are headed our way. I wonder how Jeff and his team deal with it.
You guys seem to be the holders of this knowledge, really specific to sort of our survival, that not a lot of people know. How does that make you feel?
I get frustrated with myself. That means I'm not doing a good enough job getting what we know out there.
So it's always a challenge that we talk our own language. We're good at talking to each other about it, but translating it into a language that everybody understands is much more difficult.
Yeah.
For the earliest part of my career, I was like, well, as soon as New Orleans gets hit, society will get the message. Katrina happens, and I thought, okay, here it is.
We got it.
And
Nothing happened. All right, well, if New Orleans didn't work, the next time New York's hit, we'll get it.
East Coast gets pummeled.
Right. Sandy hits, the first thing we do is rebuild the Jersey Shore, right? We just don't get it. We don't sort of take that long view. That's the thing that keeps you up at night, right? Because you know you've got tens of millions of people in harm's way, and you don't know where the next one's going to hit.
Isn't it frustrating, the lack of political will that we have in the United States of America to address this?
Absolutely. It's the most frustrating part of my life.
All of it, right?
Right. You know, we're impartial observers, right? Scientists always come into it very skeptical. We're the most skeptical people on the planet, right? We're trying to understand how the Earth system works, and we sort of figure things out. You sort of put that message out, and it becomes immediately politicized, right? People think that, oh, well, you're just trying to get more federal money, you're trying to get prestige. The reality is, if I could prove global warming wasn't real, I'd be the most famous scientist on the planet. I would have more funding than anybody. There's lots of incentive for me to disprove climate change. I can't do it, though. We're actually measuring it. We see it happening, and there's this war going on that has nothing to do with reality.
And after living through hurricanes and seeing Katrina, and you guys living on the eastern seaboard in the most densely populated part of the country, aren't you as worried as I am?
I guess I don't believe in sitting around being afraid, rather like trying to make measures towards like,
No,
changing.
I understand, for sure.
And I don't feel doom and gloom, actually, at all. I feel empowered because I have that sense of wonder. I have that sense of excitement. We're innovative people. Why can't we make really good decisions about where we put infrastructure?
Cheers, guys. Thank you for all of your energy and your time. The incredible amount of information I've learned today. And Jeff, thank you for scaring out of me.
My pleasure.
It's time for me to leave Miami. But before I go, scientist Karen Bolter thought I really should meet one other person. Someone who might hold a key to the future. 17-year-old Delaney Reynolds.
Delaney, nice to meet you. I'm Jack. Is it true? I've heard that you are an incredible new force in the fight against climate change.
Definitely, yes. I go around and I educate as many people as possible, but my main focus is kids, because it's our generation that is gonna inherit this problem. Like, all the kids that I talk to, they're like, yes, this is a problem and we need to fix it. And they get so engaged and they're like, I want help. How can I help? What can we do?
That's so encouraging.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So it seems like that's the trend with the youth movement. Yeah. More and more people accepting
kids get
what's
it.
happening.
Unlike so many adults in leadership positions, our governor has denied that climate change is real, and our senator denies that climate change is at all related to humans, that we have not caused this. And these are educated people. I like to say that I live in a state of denial, but not me personally, the entire state of Florida.
Wow. I mean, it's a world problem, right? It's not just a Miami problem.
No. Miami is #1 in terms of vulnerability. So what we see here is going to get the whole world to wake up.
For the survival of the species, of human beings.
Or
right?
will we become Waterworld?
Exactly. Where it's just me and Kevin Costner.
On a little boat.
Well, he was kind of like an Aquaman. He didn't need a boat. Anyway, it's an amazing movie if you get a chance. Thank you so much for this. This is really the highlight of my journey.
Yes.
Finally, I found some hope. But it's been amazing talking to you. Do you have any events coming up?
Yes, actually. Part of a program called Breakthrough Miami. I'm going to give a talk to about 100 kids.
I'm Delaney, and I'm going to talk to you guys about my passion, which is global warming and sea level rise.
The good news is there are things that we can do. Instead of using fossil fuels, we have technology like wind power and hydropower and electric cars and solar power. We just need to use it.
So maybe Delaney and her generation will help us get out of this mess.
If we work together, we can do this.
I hope so. But they can't do it alone.
What do we want? When do we want it?
They need people like Karen and Nicole Hernandez-Hammer and the rest of us.
Another world is possible.